Yara Kinshield's blade sang through leather armor like it was silk. The first soldier collapsed, throat opened. The second tried to raise his weapon. Too slow. Her steel found the gap beneath his ribs. He crumpled. The third managed to lift his sword before her strike took him across the collarbone, spinning him to the ground. 3 down in 8 seconds. She pivoted, ready for the next wave. Her students fanned out behind her, blades drawn, disciplined. 20 years she drilled them in formation, in timing, in the dance of steel that separated masters from corpses. But the remaining enemy soldiers weren't charging. They were backing away, raising black tubes to their shoulders. Tubes of iron so dark they seemed to swallow light. Fennec, her star pupil, didn't hesitate. 17 years old and already faster than most knights. For he sprinted forward, blade high, going for the closest tube bearer. The air cracked like the world splitting open. Where Fennec's head had been, there was nothing, just mist. His body took 2 more steps before it understood and collapsed into the mud. Yara's breath caught. 6 more tubes swung toward her students, toward her. She'd spent 20 years mastering the blade. 2 decades of dawn training, of studying angles and timing, of perfecting the distance between intention and execution. She could read an opponent's stance and know their next 3 moves, could close 20 feet before most men could blink. And these peasants, these farmers in conscript armor with their metal sticks had just erased her best student in a heartbeat. Her remaining students froze. 8 of them, all looking to her, waiting for the order. Retreat or advance. Trust in steel or acknowledge the impossible, Yara calculated. 20 yards to the nearest enemy, 4 seconds at full sprint. They'd need at least 8 to reload those weapons. Simple math. Superior training against crude technology. She raised her blade, pointed forward. Her students charged. The tubes fired in sequence, not all at once. One, then another, then another. Coordinated, disciplined. 2 of her students dropped, then another. The air filled with thunder and copper-scent blood. Yara's calculations shattered. They weren't reloading. They were rotating fire. Farmers who should barely know which end of a sword to hold were executing tactics she'd seen only in elite guard units. She dove behind a stone wall as the world exploded around her. Chunks of rock peppered her face. Her students' screams cut short, one by one. Then silence. She pressed against the wall, breathing hard. Her fingers found the familiar weight of her sword. 20 years. 20 years, and it meant nothing against metal tubes and thunder. Through a gap in the stone, she studied the battlefield. Bodies. Her students. Children she'd trained since they could barely lift practice blades, reduced to still shapes in the mud. And 10 feet away, close enough to touch, an enemy soldier, one of the tube bearers. Throat opened by Fennec's final strike before the weapon had taken him. The black iron tube lay beside the corpse. Yara's hand tightened on her sword hilt. She could reach it. 4 seconds. Grab it and retreat before they saw her. She moved, low and fast, scooped the weapon and rolled back to cover as more cracks split the air, stone chips raining where she'd been. The weapon felt wrong in her hands, heavy but not like steel. Cold iron that seemed to drink warmth from her palms. She turned it over, studying. Strange mechanisms. Symbols etched along the barrel in script she didn't recognize. A lever, a curved piece of metal that might be a trigger. She pressed her thumb against the metal. It grew warm. Not fire warm, warning warm. Like it knew she was holding it. Like it was deciding something about her. Her other hand went to her belt, to the sword she'd inherited from her master 15 years ago. The one with the star metal composite hilt. Ornate, ceremonial. She'd always carried it but never drawn it in practice. It had seemed too precious, too much like a relic. Now pressed against stone with her students' bodies cooling in the mud, it felt warm too. The same warning warmth as the tube. What were these weapons? Where had peasants found them? 2 days later, Yara stood in the fortress dungeon. Stone walls, iron chains. And kneeling before her, bloodied and bound, one of the tube bearers. Sivar, he'd said his name was. A farmer. Wheat and barley before the riders came. Her remaining students wanted to execute him. She'd ordered them out instead. Now it was just her and this man who'd helped erase everything she'd built. He looked up at her, eyes clear despite the bruises, not afraid. Resigned, maybe, but not afraid. She asked the question that had burned in her mind for 2 days. Where did the weapons come from? Sivar laughed, a bitter sound. He asked if she really wanted to know, if she was ready to understand that her 20 years of training meant nothing, that the weapons had rewritten the rules overnight. When she told him to talk, or she'd make him, he talked. 3 months ago, he'd been plowing fields, the same fields his father had plowed, his father's father, generation after generation of wheat and barley and knowing their place. Then riders came, not to conscript, to test. They lined up the village, every person over 12, handed each one a weapon like the black iron tubes, told them to aim at a target downfield. Sivar's brother went first, lifted the weapon. It shuddered in his hands, grew hot, then exploded. Not like a blast outward, like it turned inward, consumed him. Where his torso had been, nothing, just mist and the smell of burned meat. 1 in 8, Sivar said. That was the survival rate. The weapons chose, accepted or rejected. Noble birth didn't matter. 5 lords brought to the testing had been reduced to vapor. Combat skill didn't matter. An elderly grandmother who'd never held a blade was accepted. The selection seemed random, but the distributors, the masked riders who brought the weapons, they claimed the star medal knew that it read something in the wielder. Found them worthy or wanting. Yara stepped closer. Star medal, the same material in her inherited sword's hilt. She asked what he meant. Sivar explained. The weapons weren't forged from earthly iron. They were made from fallen stars, meteorite metal with properties that defied normal metallurgy. The fragments contained something, intelligence maybe, or judgment. They bonded with wielders they deemed acceptable, rejected the rest violently. When Sivar's turn came, his hands had trembled. He'd watched his brother turn to mist, watched 3 neighbors follow. When the weapon had been cold at first, then warm, then cool again. Like it was deciding, testing. It had accepted him. The masked distributors took those who survived, trained them for weeks, not swordsmanship, positioning, rotation, distance management. The weapons delivered death, but wielders remained fragile, flesh and bone, so they learned tactics to compensate. Yara asked about the rotation fire, the disciplined volleys that had cut down her students. Sivar nodded. They'd been drilled endlessly. The weapons didn't reload like primitive fire lances. They had mechanisms, cartridges. Each tube could fire 6 times before needing new ammunition. But in formation, they never needed to. Fire, step back, next rank forward, continuous pressure. They'd watched her calculate reload time, knew she'd charge. When the math she'd relied on was designed to be wrong, she asked the question that had haunted her. Who distributed the weapons? Who benefited from destroying the Blade Master hierarchy? Sivar's face darkened. He said he didn't know. The masked riders never revealed themselves. They appeared in villages at night, conducted the tests, took the survivors, left the dead. Yara studied him in the torchlight. His face was honest, brutally, terrifyingly honest. She'd interrogated enough prisoners to know when someone was concealing truth or embellishing it. Sivar was doing neither. He was simply telling her what he'd seen, what he'd survived. She asked him about the distributors, the masked riders. What did they want? Sivar's chains clinked as he shifted position. He said he didn't know their endgame, only what they preached during training. And the age of inherited hierarchy was ending. The age of blade masters who claimed superiority through accident of birth and access to training. The star medal would create a new order, one where worth wasn't determined by who could afford a decade of instruction in killing techniques, but by something deeper, something the medal itself recognized. Yara felt anger rising. She told him her students weren't born to privilege. Half of them were scholarship cases, farm children who showed aptitude. She'd given them access. Sivar's eyes met hers. He asked how many she'd turned away. How many farm children came to her gates without coin and left without training? How many merchant daughters, blacksmith sons, weaver apprentices she'd refused because their families couldn't pay tuition? She'd turned away hundreds, thousands over 20 years. And that was simply how schools operated. Training required resources, instructors needed payment, facilities needed maintenance. Sivar nodded slowly. He said that's what the distributors counted on. The blade masters had built a system where skill could only be obtained through wealth. Then they pointed to that skill as proof of inherent superiority. The star metal broke that cycle. It didn't care about training. It didn't care about lineage. It made its own judgments. Yara asked what judgments? What criteria? If nobles and trained fighters were rejected while farmers were accepted, what pattern existed? Seaver leaned forward as far as his chains allowed. He said the distributors claimed the metal read intention, not skill, not intelligence, not even morality in any traditional sense. It read why someone reached for violence. If those who approach killing as domination, as proof of superiority, as exercise of power over the weak, the metal rejected them, consumed them. But those who held violence as necessity, as tool without desire, as burden rather than pleasure, those it accepted. He said his brother had been cruel, small cruelties, kicked dogs, mocked the weak, felt satisfaction in having power over things smaller than himself. Sivar had watched him do it for years. When the weapon exploded him, Sivar understood. His brother had wanted the weapon because it would make him powerful, would let him dominate. Sivar himself had taken the weapon with shaking hands, expecting death, almost hoping for it after watching his brother consumed. He'd felt no desire for power, only acceptance of whatever judgment came. The metal had cooled in his hands, accepted him. Yara turned away, processing. She thought about her students, the ones she'd trained. Fennec had been different from the others. He'd never gloried in victory, never sneered at defeated opponents. He'd approached the blade as discipline, as art, as burden of responsibility. The others, some of them had loved the power, had trained not to defend or serve, but to prove themselves superior. Those students had charged into the tubes with confidence in their dominance. They'd ceased breathing in mud. Fennec, who'd questioned the very idea of superiority through skill, had charged knowing he'd fall. Loyalty over survival. The metal hadn't judged him. She'd sent him into it. She asked Sivar one more question. If the weapons judged intention, why did they exist? Why create tools that democratize killing if the goal was cosmic justice? Sivar smiled grimly. He said that was the question, wasn't it? The distributors never answered it directly, but he'd formed his own theory. The Blade Masters had ruled for 3 centuries based on a lie, that their skill made them worthy to rule. The star metal exposed that lie, proved that skill was just access plus time. Some farmers were worthier than lords. Some lords were worthier than farmers. Birth and training meant nothing. The metal judged the soul. He believed it was conspiracy to overthrow Blade Master aristocracy, but didn't know who benefits. He admitted the weapons chose their wielders, and she'd taken one from a corpse. Most who tried to steal the weapons exploded within seconds of touching the trigger mechanism. If she attempted to fire it, if the metal found her unworthy, she'd join her students in the mud. What he did know was this. The riders wore masks marked with constellation symbols. They spoke of rebalancing, of the age of earned hierarchy ending. Yara's hand had gone to her inherited sword, the hilt warm against her palm. She asked what the constellation symbols looked like. Sivar described them. 7 stars in a curved pattern, like a drinking cup tipped on its side. The same symbol etched into her sword's hilt. She'd carried it for 15 years and never questioned the marking. Her master had given it to her on his deathbed, told her it would know her. She'd assumed he meant it would become familiar through use, a ceremony of words. Now she wondered if he'd meant something else entirely. Yara had left him in the dungeon, climbed to her quarters, sat alone with the black iron tube she'd taken from the battlefield. It sat on her desk, cold and dark, waiting. Now 3 days after Fennec's head had vanished into mist, Yara opened his footlocker. Personal effects. The belongings of a boy she'd trained since he was 9. She found his journal tucked beneath practice wraps. Yara sat on the floor of her quarters, Fennec's journal open across her knees. The leather binding was soft from handling. He'd written in it nearly every day for 3 years. Her hands trembled as she turned pages. The early entries were technical. Observations about footwork, questions about blade angles, sketches of proper stance. His handwriting had been careful then, measured, each letter formed with the same discipline she'd drilled into his sword work. Then about 18 months ago, the handwriting changed. became more rushed, more passionate. The observation shifted from technique to philosophy. An entry from Winter. Master Kinshield says the blade reveals character, that those who master it prove themselves worthy of respect. But today I watched her turn away the grain merchant's daughter. The girl was 15, naturally talented, desperate to learn. She'd saved money for a year. It wasn't enough. Master didn't even test her, just sent her away. How does the blade reveal character if you never get to hold one? Yara's throat tightened. She remembered that girl, remembered her disappointed face. She'd had 3 other students starting that season. The school's capacity was full. The girl's money wouldn't have covered even half a year's instruction. It had been a practical decision, a necessary decision. Another entry, Spring. I've been training Mara, Jonas, Asin Cave in secret. The student's master turned away. They practice with me after dark in the East Courtyard. Mara has better reflexes than half our advanced students. Jonas learns faster than anyone I've ever seen. Cave has perfect discipline. In 6 weeks, they've progressed further than nobles I've watched train for 6 months. The only difference is I'm giving them what Master gave me, attention and instruction. Their unworthiness was just poverty. Yara closed her eyes. She'd never known. He'd been undermining her school's entire structure. Proving her selection criteria meant nothing. Proving worth had nothing to do with who could pay. Summer entry. Master gave a speech today about how the Blade Master lineage represents the peak of human achievement. Centuries of refined technique passed master to student. She's not wrong about the technique, but she ignores how that passage happens. I'm a Blade Master because she chose to teach me. She chose to teach me because my mother was a war hero who saved her life. I earned nothing. I was given everything. The blacksmith's son who's brilliant with metal but can't afford tuition, he's not less worthy. He's just less connected. Yara felt something cracking inside her chest. Every word was cutting through foundations she'd built her identity on. Fennec had seen it. Her brightest student had seen through her completely. The entry from 2 weeks before the battle was longer, more anguished. Today in the market I met one of them, a distributor. He knew my name, knew I was Yara Kinshield's star pupil. He offered me a weapon, said I could test myself. Said the star medal would accept me because I understood the truth. That skill proves nothing about worth. That access creates advantage, and advantage compounds into hierarchy, and hierarchy pretends to be merit. He said I was worthy because I'd questioned, because I'd taught in secret, because I'd seen the lie. I refused. Told him I was loyal to master. He nodded like he'd expected that, said loyalty to a flawed teacher was more worthy than power bought through betrayal, said the medal would have accepted me, said the choice not to take it proved why. Then he told me master carries star medal herself, has for 15 years, an inherited blade with the same constellation marks as the distributor's mass. He said she doesn't know what she carries, doesn't know she's part of the legacy she's fighting, that the medal has been waiting for her to understand. I don't know what to believe, but I looked at master's ceremonial sword when I returned. The marks are there. 7 stars in the drinking cup formation, same as his mask. She's connected to this somehow. She just doesn't know it. Yara's hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the journal. She looked at the wall where her inherited blade hung. The constellation marks she'd never questioned, never examined, never understood. She'd been carrying the answer for 15 years, wearing it on her belt. Her master had given it to her with cryptic words she'd dismissed as sentimental. It will know you. Not poetic ceremony, literal truth. The star medal would recognize her. The final entry was brief. Written the night before the battle in steady or resolved handwriting. Tomorrow we face them, the weapon bearers. Master is certain we'll win. Certain that 20 years of blade mastery outweighs 20 minutes of distributed weaponry. I know we won't. I've done the math, watched their tactics, studied the reports. We're charging into a system designed to kill blade masters specifically. Rotation fire, distance superiority, no reloading vulnerability. We're obsolete and master can't see it. I'm going anyway, not because I believe in victory, because she needs someone to stand with her when the truth becomes undeniable. Because loyalty, real loyalty, isn't following someone when they're right. It's standing with them when they're wrong in helping them survive the consequences. That might be the only real worth. Choosing to stand when you could run. Choosing connection over survival. If the star medal judges intention, maybe that's what it's looking for. Not dominance, not even purpose, just willingness to sacrifice for something beyond yourself. Tomorrow I'll find out. Yara's tears fell onto the page, blurring the ink. He'd known. He'd known everything and charged anyway. For her. Despite her. Yara closed the journal, set it carefully on the desk beside the captured weapon. Both objects sitting there in dim light, one containing her dead student's truth, the other containing her potential death. She stood, walked to the window. The fortress training yard spread below, empty now. Blood had been scrubbed from the stones. The students who'd survived had left, gone home to families, abandoned their training, unable to face the school where half their classmates had been erased. She'd built this, 3 decades of training blade masters, hundreds of students, thousands of hopefuls turned away, an entire system based on the assumption that mastery proved worth. Sivar's words echoed. The medal read intention, not skill. Those who approached violence as domination were consumed. Those who held it as necessity were accepted. She thought about her own intentions. Why had she devoted 30 years to the blade? The honest answer was uncomfortable. She'd loved being superior, loved being the best, loved the respect that came with mastery, the deference, the way lesser fighters looked at her with awe and fear. She'd told herself it was about discipline, about art, about protecting the kingdom. But underneath, she'd loved the power. That intention would get her consumed. The weapon would judge her unworthy, and she'd join Sivar's brother as missed. Unless her master had known, had given her the star metal blade knowing she'd need it someday, knowing she carried something in her bloodline or her soul that connected to the weapon's legacy. The constellation marks weren't decoration, they were identification. She returned to the desk, touched the inherited sword's hilt. It was warm. It was always warm now since the captured tube had started resonating. 2 pieces of the same system, recognizing each other. Her master's final words, "It will know you." Not "you will know it" through practice. Not "it will become familiar." It will know you. The metal would recognize her, had been waiting to recognize her, but recognize her as what? Worthy heir to some ancient legacy? Or arrogant blade master who'd built superiority on access and called it merit? The only way to know was to test it. She picked up the captured weapon. It immediately began warming, the countdown to judgment. Her palms started sweating despite the cool evening air. Every instinct screamed to drop it. She'd seen what happened to the unworthy. Sivar's brother, the 5 nobles. Instant consumption, erased from existence. But Fennec's words were louder than instinct. Choosing to stand when you could run. Choosing connection over survival. He'd made that choice knowing he'd fall. For her. Despite knowing she was wrong, she could make it for different reasons. Not to prove superiority, not to reclaim dominance, but to understand. To know whether everything she'd built was founded on lies or whether some thread of truth ran through it. The weapon grew hotter, vibrating now, symbols along the barrel beginning to glow faint orange. Her inherited sword responded, started glowing from its place on her belt, the constellation marks pulsing. She raised the weapon, not at an enemy, at the stone wall of her own quarters, at the foundation she'd built her life on. The heat spread up her arms, burning now, real pain. The vibration intensified until her whole body shook with it. Drop it. Survival instinct. Drop it now. But Fennec hadn't dropped his charge when he knew it would fail. He'd committed. Fully, completely. She committed. The weapon synchronized with her heartbeat. The burning shifted, no longer warning, resonating. The inherited sword blazed white-hot, both weapons pulsing in rhythm with her blood. Recognition, not judgment. Recognition. The metal knew her. It knew something she'd never known about herself. Some legacy, some connection, some thread that ran back through her master to the star metal's origin. She was part of this. Had always been part of this. The conspiracy to overthrow blade masters had been operating around her, through her, with her unwitting participation for 15 years. The irony was devastating. She'd spent 30 years building Blade Master's supremacy while carrying the weapon meant to destroy it. Her finger found the trigger. The symbols were white-hot now, both weapons screaming with light. One question remained, the only question that mattered. Did the Star Metal accept her because of her legacy? Because of bloodline and inherited connection? The exact kind of unearned advantage she'd built her philosophy on? Or did it accept her because right now, in this moment, she was approaching violence not as proof of dominance, but as desperate search for truth? Not to kill, but to understand? Was she worthy because of what she'd inherited, or because of what she'd chosen? The weapons gave no answer. They simply blazed, waiting. She pulled the trigger. The world exploded into light and thunder, and the smell of burning metal, and then nothing but white, and the question hanging in the air unanswered, and the truth suspended between acceptance and rejection, and her fingers still on the trigger, and the light still blazing, and everything she'd believed dissolving into that single frozen moment of not knowing if she was worthy or wanting or something else entirely. Something the Star Metal had been waiting 2 decades to reveal, something her master had known when he'd given her the sword. Something Fennec had glimpsed before the weapons took him. Something the distributors understood about rebalancing and cosmic order and the end of earned hierarchy. And she was still standing, still holding the weapon, still feeling it resonate with her heartbeat, still seeing the constellation symbols burn white hot. Am I still waiting for the metal to decide? So here's the thing, I'm ending it right there. If you want to know whether Yara survives, whether the weapon accepts her, what her connection to the Star Metal legacy actually means, you need to tell me. Comment part 2 and let me know you're invested in seeing how this plays out.